could vote and say that pornography doesn't count if you're
for example,
7 years old.
Why do you get those? Isn't it just as important what we say?
Yeah. Having said that, do you want this one?
No, I'm good.
All right.
I got to be.
That was very inclusive. I did give you a bit of gum. You paid me back.
Let me just finish. So I was going to say that if that's the case, so we've agreed. So what did you say now? Yeah. So social desirability, what society agrees upon, which, as we said, is a precept even taken from milk. Yeah. Johnson, who talks about it,
very difficult to define in terms of the child's
homosexuality is
because the age of consent.
No,
it's a
50
really
years ago, it wasn't accepted. Now it's accepted.
But here the point is, if we're going to talk about
28 states in the United States allow their parents to marry off the children at any age. At any age.
But
28
you
states.
believe that children should be able to make those decisions themselves?
No, I said no. I said children should be able to express themselves.
Express themselves.
Not make this. No, of course not. Yeah. So they can say to their parents, "I think you're an arse. You're talking shit." But at the end of the day, somebody.
You don't think that they should be able to choose whether they want to have a sexual relationship with someone if they're making a fully.
God, it's a really big subject, right? But I would say, on the whole, no. No.
So now going back to Islam and religion, yeah.
Now I want to get to religion in general.
Religion in general.
I'm an absolutist. I think that there's almost no such thing as hate speech.
I'm an atheist. That's me down.
Okay, well, I will say to you that, look, let's apply the same logic as we've applied with the poison gas, the theatre, all those things that we talked about, and talk about the same reasons. In Arabic, they call it the ilal, the reasons. When you make a law, there should be some kind of rationality that justifies the law, yeah? So the reason why we wouldn't distribute ingredients of poison gas, the reason why we wouldn't do these things, is because of the social harm is more, the
ramifications, I agree.
Is more than the social benefits, okay? And it's simple as that. We have to analyse now, whether it be Islam or any other religion, I'm not giving any answers, but it's a question you have to ask yourselves, yeah? Is if you're allowed, I'm not talking about for the critique of religion, because Mill and others would agree that you must be able to critique and question religion in order to come to the truth. We're not saying that you shouldn't question or critique.
What about comedy acts?
We're talking about mockery and provocation.
Like
so we have to ask a question now, as a society, which is, if we have said one of the rationales of us not allowing certain other things and censoring other things is that it could create provocation, anger, resentment.
Well, I think we said harm. The mill thing is harm.
Harm principle.
It's not about provocation. It's about harm.
Look, harm principle. If we stick to only a physical,
I understand it's difficult to define harm. No. I could say something to you and you'd be harmed by it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not talking about that, because it seems to me, I might be wrong about this, but from my reading, Mill was talking about physical harm.
I think you're stretching.
But then he put other caveats in place. What I'm saying is that it doesn't always have to be physical. Going back to our example of the young girl, 2 years old, being called a monkey, for example. Your daughter, being called a monkey by a big old man. This is harassment.
Psychologically traumatizing.
So, okay, why is it harassment? It's freedom of speech. But we say it's harassment because you're provoking he's provoking you.
It's harassment because it's harassment.
Child, right? Okay, in that case, we have said that we should censor, and in fact, law is in place to stop this man from saying this stuff. We would say for good reason.
When we do.
So, the point is, if we're saying that certain speech which is provocative to your person, to your child's person, should be censored because it's harassment, then we have to look at all of those things which could be considered harassment. Because you could argue it's all arbitrary.
This is where we disagree. This is where we disagree.
No, but it's all subjective. Why is
I think we both disagree here. You probably do as well.
This or that, or
He's trying to get to a point where he's going to say that if we say something against his religion, it has to be illegal.
Now,
that's
in
what
my
he's getting
opinion,
to.
this was.
And I do not want that.
I don't want to offend you, Muhammed, but this was a stunt.
I don't believe that anything we could say against his religion would be conceived to be harm.
Or harassment. The Conservative Party have their own conferences.
Well, it could be that if it went up to you and abused you because but then it would be something else.
Sorry, go ahead, sorry.
The crazies are going crazy over there.
Ali Dawa wanted to speak at their event. Now, I don't agree with that event because I don't believe absolute free speech.
No, but he should have been able to speak.
No, I don't think so. Because
do you
know why? Because the organizer of that event is Tommy Robinson. No matter how you feel about him, he organised that event.
Well, to be honest,
but Richard, the reason I'm saying it is he shot himself in the foot. Robinson shot himself. Richard.
That's equivalent to you, Mohammed, as you
organising a party
or a wedding, and then someone inviting your enemy, your friend inviting your enemy to go there and to disrupt your wedding. That's the same.
Yeah, but they're not enemies. They're not that. They're not. No, they're not enemies. They have differences of opinion.
I'll say to you, look,
I don't like calling them enemies. I think that's bad.
It's a separate case. Which I'm not going to talk about it. Do you know why? Because it's kind of like history now.
It's a bit emotive with you as well.
Let's move on from this. Who cares about Tom Robinson?
Okay, my question is then, what is Islamophobia to you?
Do you know what? The word Islamophobia for me, I try
we
and
know what
avoid
it is.
using it.
Fear of
I
Islam.
might have used it once on
Okay,
the irrational fear of Islam.
I think it's a
but
misnomer.
For me,
I really do.
I don't use that. I've never used it.
No,
I
good.
try not to use it. Do you know why? Because the truth is this, yeah? Phobias are all you can argue irrational in a sense.
Yes.
You can
I
have
think it's a
rational-
misuse of the
you
word.
can- On a deep psychological level, you can say that we all have a phobia
Of something. Yes.
right? And most of those phobias are irrational. Like,
Yes.
for example, this is something they teach. I haven't done this myself, but I've spoken to lots of people.
I hope I got none.
They teach you when you do cognitive behavioral therapy, yeah?
CBT, yeah.
CBT, which is what the NHS refers people to. They try and track what you call false cognitions. It's actually part of their training. If you go on a bridge and it's all very safe, and you look down, yeah, and you're on a very high distance, you have a phobia. You understand? You have a phobia, don't
Right,
you?
but height phobia is not irrational, right?
Yeah, no.
Heights are dangerous, so
No,
therefore
it's
we have
true.
an innate
If
fear
you're
of height.
on a plane
It's not a phobia.
and you look down and you're a bit scared, the truth is that on a strictly probabilistic basis, you might have the same chance of death as walking on a street, for example.
You're right about that.
So what I'm saying is that in terms of cognitive processes, and if we want to really dig deep on a psychological level, as what is a phobia, and our phobia is always emotionally or otherwise psychologically justified, you can almost argue that most things that we're scared of we shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, from a psycho-spiritual perspective, if you like, we're all going to die anyways. You shouldn't be scared of anything. You know what I'm saying? I would make that argument.
Do you want me to explain why there's so much so-called Islamophobia? Why? I'll explain to you now, to every Muslim here, why there's so much so-called, why you perceive there's so much hatred towards Islam.
I haven't made that argument though.
Okay, but
He's actually said the opposite, I think.
A lot of Muslims say this. I included Ali Dawah, always says this. Yeah?
Yeah, I believe that there is
Ali
hate
does.
towards
Ali
Muslims.
definitely does.
This is the reason why people dislike Islam. Yeah. Okay, I'll bring it out to you. Okay, one, because of the nature of what we've read about Muhammad. Two, the way Islamic countries treat their minorities. Okay. For example, in Bangladesh over the last 3 years, 5 bloggers, atheist bloggers, have been chopped to death, to pieces, for blogging about atheism.
Remind me not to
Same
blog
happened
there.
in Pakistan. There are political prisoners in
No, don't worry.
the
let me finish
the
on this
Islamic
point.
Republic of Bangladesh. That's what it's called. Has it not got Islam in the name?
No, let me finish this point. Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay, it's a Muslim majority country, yeah?
Yeah.
Muslim majority country.
There were 50 apparently.
Same with in Indonesia, there's an MP, a Christian MP, that said something frivolous about Muhammad. He's in prison. Asia Bibi has been in prison for 5 years in Pakistan for saying something about Muhammad.
There's a few
Now,
Go ahead.
in this country, you had people for years.
I was hoping we weren't going to go here.
Christianity was exactly the same.
It's going to die.
They had these
No.
hate speech laws against
I want to get back to that
Christianity.
feminism
They
thing.
had
I want that
Inquisition,
out on
they
the
had
table.
pogroms.
I'm
If you weren't
very
Christian
interested in
enough, And they were the Enlightenment period.
That I might learn
people
something
are scared
from.
of all these so-called ideals.
I'm glad you come to the table. Thank
Okay, a lot of them are racist. They don't have brown.
No, but I know nothing about it.
Yeah,
So I'm interested.
most
Well,
of
I
them.
know something. You
But
know, I have my own
a
opinion,
lot of the
but
Islamophobia
you're going to give me something interesting. I can feel it.
It
Sounds good. I like it.
To live in a state where you're not allowed to express yourself, or you're not allowed to do your own dawah of your own religion or your own belief without being accused of insulting the mass of people.
All right,
You know
so
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. All right, so I think what a lot of what you said there, with respect to you, is quite fallacious, because what you've done is you equated Muslim majority countries with the rules of Islam. So
I knew that was coming.
But do you know why this is
I
important?
knew that was coming.
Because the rules of Islam, if what occurs in Muslim majority countries is consistent, then the rules of Islam does not matter.
Right, let me tell you something, right? No, that's not how it works.
The reason
That's how
people
it
don't
works.
like Islam or Muslims is because of propaganda. Because Christians have done how much fuckery all over the
but
planet.
Christianity is no longer relevant in this country, more or less. It's
All right, so-
ceremonial in this country.
I'm really sorry, sir. Earlier you were talking about the way Muslims, like other Muslim nations are behaving.
Nations,
right?
yeah,
Now,
nations.
in Jamaica, they quite literally sing songs about beating up gay people.
Right.
There are no
But-
Muslims over there. I
but
think it's
Jamaica-
a third world country issue in other nations
But-
more than the religion
Yeah,
itself.
so basically it's a political
Muslims
issue.
have always been
Mohammed, we need to
Saudi
get back to the
Arabia-
feminism
Saudi
thing.
Arabia-
Let's
Feminism.
tone it back in.
It's Saudi Arabia.
Let's get back on
It's
that.
Saudi Arabia, Qatar.
Richard, go ahead.
Bahrain.
It's the richest,
Bahrain.
richest country on earth. Yeah, the center of Islam.
Okay, I don't think it's the Richard.
Emirates.
There are political.
In terms of GDP.
There are political bloggers. There are political people. There are people in prison for talking
Thank
about
you,
Islam
respect.
in Saudi
Saudi
Arabia.
Arabians, right, the main sect of Saudi Arabian Islam, this is just things I've heard, they're Wahhabists, right? And there's Saudi Arabians and Iranians, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Saudi Arabians and Iranians hate each other. right? Now, this is the big problem I have, is the fact that people seem to think that Islam is just one entity, one thing, one idea of Islam, and there never is. Same as there's no such thing as a one way of thinking Christian. We don't look at a great deal of Christians and think, yeah,
I think that's completely true, but I will say one thing. I think
And-
from a
Let me
non-Islamic
hear your perspective,
from a
yeah.
non-Islamic perspective,
I-
I think we do tend to put things in the same pot. We will. For example, let me give you an example. If
go
we
on.
were talking about United States of America,
Yeah.
we would throw Donald Trump in there, and a lot of people hate him. But we as non-Americans would say, well, Donald Trump's part of America, right?
let's talk
We
about
would do that.
America.
We would
Right,
do
right.
that, right?
Let's talk about it.
I'm just saying, in fairness,
So
that's
let
what we
me
tend to
kind of
do.
respond to a lot of
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's what we do.
I
Yeah.
understand.
So let me just kind of respond to you. So what you've done there is you've looked at some Muslim majority countries and said, well, and a lot of the stuff you said, I believe it is probably accurate, yeah? There are 2 or 3 fallacies in your reasoning. One of them is that you've adopted, although we've already discussed how freedom of speech has limitations and we should have censorship and all this kind of to a certain extent at least, yeah? And we've seen the contradictions in Western thought.
That's what you said.
But
It's propaganda.
You can't stop using post-enlightenment ideas as your premise.
My premise is that do people?
No, but let me tell you what I mean.
Should people be imprisoned
Hold on.
for insulting
No.
Muhammad or
Let me tell you
Islam?
something. Let me ask you a question. Let me turn it on you.
Yeah.
If you believe in democracy?
Yes.
Yeah, all
not
right.
absolutely.
So let me ask you a question. If you have a country,
Yes.
80% of the population find it a provocation to believe, to insult any of the prophets, Jesus or Muhammad or whatever, and they pass a law which is in line with that democratic reasoning.
Yes.
Should there be people that are law-abiding, or should we forgo that law?
Law-abiding, but then that's why Islamophobia exists.
No, I'm just.
because
Can you
people
see
do
the
not want
question?
this country to
My
become
question
their
is
country.
on democratic reasoning.
Yes.
Yes. And we've said here already there are contradictions between democracy and freedom of speech, and in that case, we said sometimes it makes more sense to go with a democratic reasoning than a freedom of speech logic. If you have a country, let's say like Saudi Arabia, no problem, yeah. 90% of people in Saudi Arabia pass a vote in a referendum that actually insulting Jesus or Ganesh or Vishnu or anything like that
That's their right.
is something that should be, at least like a fine should be put in place. Let's say, for example,
Yeah.
and that's the referendum. The government has accepted this,
Yeah.
and they passed a law in line with that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
My question is, should that law be in place, or should now an external party with nothing to do with the country, nothing to do with the people, the civilians, come in and impose or superimpose other laws?
This is my point. That law is their business, but
So, okay, there you go.
but this is where
So what's the problem?
Islamophobia
So what's
comes
the
in.
problem?
Because in a democratic society, the more Islam that there is, then the more likely that those laws will come into these laws.
Can you see how you're diverting from point to point?
That's
so,
the same
see,
point.
see here, we've already discussed that freedom of speech
Yes.
and democracy, freedom of speech and capitalism are not in contradistinction, that they are contradicting each other at points, and we have to decide between them. So if we decide that democracy should trump, a democratic principle should trump a freedom of speech principle, and that, for example, 90% of a given population, democratically, for example,
This is
votes
where
on
the
fact-
America's different.
Vote on the fact that
Because it
there should not be,
constitutionally
there should
holds
be
free
no
speech.
reason
We don't have it,
for
right?
someone, for
That's why
example,
people
to
here
call
are
you a
calling for
monkey. No reason.
some sort of
And
written
that calling you a
constitution like
monkey
you
is
have.
finable or prosecutable. Yeah.
We have
They
we
decide that.
apparently we did
If
have
they
some
decide
kind
that, or
of
they decide,
thing
for
about freedom of
example,
speech many years
any
ago,
religious figure
and they
should
want
not
it
be mocked
brought
in
into
public
some sort of
because it creates
constitutional,
social division.
truth,
That's
where they
something
say
that's
this is
decided and
absolutely
voted upon
constitutional
democratically.
fact, and you
Should we not
cannot
follow that
violate it.
law?
Yes.
Like the
Okay, fine.
Americans.
So now-
But it leads you guys into
No
trouble,
problem,
right?
because
Because then it means people can say terrible
If-
things. So
if-
this is the argument.
If
Personally,
people
I'd like people to
that
express
eat-
themselves.
So let's say people
Yeah.
eat
If you don't like
cats,
black people,
that's
say
their
it.
culture. They eat
Let's
cats.
hear
And
you
there's
say it.
one-
If I don't like
10
women,
10
hear me
million
say it.
people
Because if you
there's
don't,
1 million people that eat
I will
cats.
keep it
What will be
secret.
the culture of that?
You'll know nothing, you'll learn nothing. Let everybody express themselves so we can critique them.
So,
Got to be able to
if
challenge
we live
them,
in a
right? If you
society
let
where
them,
we are
because they'll
free
just talk to
to
their friends and say, hate women, hate women.
Any religion.
We don't want that shit. We want people to speak their
and
mind.
get
we are
outside
free
our
to
bubbles.
box that belief, and then people are embracing, a belief about.
I wanna drag him back.
and then the majority then
Because he's
then
got,
becomes the
because he's a
majority of the
Muslim
country.
and
Then
a well-known
that
one here in
country
Nepal,
turns into
I want to see
tyrannical,
his views on whether you,
country
what you're
that-
going to
that
say
is
to him
against
about
the
feminism.
But hold on.
I'm very interested in that.
There's once again presuppositions which you fail
Because he's going to struggle with it, I
to
think.
prove.
think so.
We've already
Yeah, they've got, the Sharia's got very definite
Democratic-
rules
do
about
you know what
women.
democracy
And
is?
women, this is where I think Islamophobia is a problem for the West,
I didn't mean it as a
is that
question. I know you know.
a lot of Islamic
I meant
doctrine
it
is
as
oppressive
a
to women.
rhetorical question, because I was gonna
And
say,
you can't deny it.
if democracy
And that's why I'm
is
seeing, I would like to see what he
actualised
says to you,
perfectly,
not
this is
me.
what I'm saying,
Because as a
democracy
white
is
man, he could just
actualised- I want
abuse
to
me.
do this as well, yeah?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
go.
sorry, just one
No,
point.
please, go ahead.
If democracy is actualised perfectly, it should have.
What, do you mean suffrage in the sense that we vote for issues?
No, in the sense that
Because I don't, not representative.
if we're talking about the vast majority we're talking about the majority principle, not
representative.
No, the majority principle. Yeah.
Okay.
So the idea that what should go forward is what the vast majority of people decide. If democracy is to be actualized perfectly in that sense,
which I don't agree with.
Democracy should have the propensity to self-implode. One more time.
Correct.
One more time.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. If democracy is actualized perfectly, it should have the propensity to self-implode. For example, if anyone in any given time, a populace, decides against democracy through democracy.
Correct.
So it's democratic for it not to be democratic.
It's irrefutable. You're absolutely correct.
So here, the point is this now: if you have a country which votes against democratic or freedom of speech type principles, not only is it doing what's in its best interest, but it's doing what's in its democratic interest. So, for example, if Saudi Arabia, you keep mentioning it, but let's mention it, no problem. If they say we don't want democracy, do they have the... No problem. They say we don't want it. Now, is it their democratic right to not want democracy?
Yes, it is.
Fine. Then a conversation is closed, isn't it?
No, because
Then case is closed, isn't
no,
it?
because if I look at every Islamic country, I cannot see a democracy where.
Okay, but what if they don't want it?
Well, I know. No, this is where Islamophobia comes from, because when I'm trying to be as loving as possible.
No problem. But do you see how logically?
No, but I'm trying to explain Islamophobia to you. The more of a certain type of culture that is in an area, then more that area will turn into that culture.
So what's that got to do with what I'm saying?
The point I'm saying is that people might not want to live in that culture.
The problem you had with Indonesia and Saudi Arabia is that they have blasphemy laws.
Yes.
In a nutshell. What I'm saying is that what if the majority of people in that place want blasphemy laws?
Yeah, then that's
Then
their opinion.
it's none of our business.
It's none of our business.
Fine, so you don't make a complaint about it.
But it's an Islamic thing.
So why does the white man have the right? I know you're not a white man, but those who have been affected by white men ideas.
Yeah, you're not white.
Why
I
do
can
they
confirm.
Why do they Western people have the right to dictate to others
No, I'm
what
not saying dictate
what should be in their best interest?
Yes, but I'm not saying dictate to
Surely that's self-contradictory in itself. Isn't
It
it?
is because they don't understand democracy, which is what your point is.
Thank you.
I'm not saying dictate.
I do agree with you,
I'm not
but I
saying
do understand that there's fear.
I'm not saying dictate.
This cannot-
to
this cannot be
country.
denied.
I'm
Yeah.
saying this country, the people of this country who do not want this country to become like Indonesia, like Saudi Arabia,
Yes.
have a right to express that fear. And that fear is Islamophobia.
I don't think me and you.
But Mohammed's point-
I don't think me and you have a different opinion on that.
But Richard, Mohammed's point is that the problem lies with democracy, which I think is valid.
I think what you were saying, and what I
And
was
I'm
referring
against
was not
democracy
the-
for that
wasn't the
reason,
point.
for certain
You were
aspects of
saying
it.
that you got problems with this country and that country.
Yeah,
and
because
Sudan,
it gives tyranny of the majority, right?
What
People
happens
can-
in those countries is what
Well,
happens in those countries.
Big topic. Let's talk about it later.
And if they decide,
I'm gonna get into
those
trouble if I
people,
say
those
it, but-
Africans or those Arabs or
I have
those
had a
Asians
speak-
decide on something as a collective unit,
A little bit different, but yeah.
democratically, even from a democratic perspective.
Do you know Peter Joseph?
You have no right to
The Zeitgeist
talk about it.
movement,
Why
the
does it
resource
seem to be
guys. So
only
it's a little bit like that, not much.
that enforce these laws?
Maybe because they're Muslim. Blasphemy laws are part of Islam.
Part of Islam.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so where does Islamophobia come from then?
No, blasphemy laws are part of Islam.
Yes, so therefore, people who are against the spread of Islam, not Islam in general, but the spread of Islam, do not want to live in Islam.
No one is saying, this is the point, of confusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're conflating what's happening in Muslim majority countries with what's happening in the West. We represent, according to the 2011 census, 4.8% of the population in this country. We're a minority. We're a significant minority.
Yeah, obviously you are.
Muslims are, so here, what I'm saying to you is, what happens in the West is the West business. We're not saying, we're not arguing, yeah, that there shouldn't be freedom of speech in this country, or that we should have a Sharia law here, because really,
Some are.
No.
Admit that.
Let me tell you something, yeah. Muslims can't, it doesn't actually make any sense because Sharia is only useful for Muslims. Sharia, let me say this one more time. Sharia, which is Quran and Sunnah, is only useful for those who want to practice Islam. If you pray right now, the Islamic prayer, it will not be counted. If you fast, it will not be, according to us, it won't be counted. It's just exercise. Do you understand? So having Sharia law for non-Muslims is nonsensical.
Well, people are scared of living under Islamic
so
law.
that's why I want to readjust. I don't want to lie to you guys. In our own countries, we do what we want, but the people decide what politically.
But Richard's basic point is this, simply put, that if there was a majority,
in this country,
it could change things, and that thing could be feared.
Yeah, no
and that's
problem.
undeniable.
But
yeah?
now we're 4.8%.
That's undeniable.
Yeah,
But
you're right.
I don't think that's coming from people naturally in their, like, I think that's being forced upon them. I
Oh,
don't
there's
think that
definitely
they-
an element of propaganda. Definitely.
What's your name? Sorry,
Christina.
Christina. My name's Richard, yeah?
Richard.
I'll say this, yeah? I'm 38 years old now. And before 9/11...
Really? I thought you were 25.
I know.
What did he say? What did he say?
Before 9/11, yeah, there was a word, I don't want to repeat it, but it's spelled P-A-K-I, to express the hatred for